Welcome back to the Seven Figure Flipping Podcast. I have one of the best house flippers in the United States today, my friend Sam Hopkins. Sam, welcome to the show, man.
I'm excited to be on here, man. Thanks for having me.
Sam, brother, you have the coolest. You're probably one of my favorite investors, not just because you're really good at it and your business is, in my opinion, one of the best I've seen. But dude, you're like the most focused, disciplined person I know, which obviously contributes to your success, in my opinion. And just for the people who don't know you as well as I do, can you give a little background on who you are and how you got into real estate?
Yeah, yeah. So I say the discipline, that's definitely a big backbone of everything for me. I started out playing sports when I was younger, and I think a lot of the same things with discipline and consistency is definitely translated over to what I do when it comes to the real estate business. As far as how I got started, I'm gonna try to give you the short version. But I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, as I'm sure probably 90% of your listeners or people that have been on the podcast probably have, right? And that kind of sparked the entrepreneurial bug and the interest in real estate and buying assets. And I believe I was working at GNC General Nutrition Store, and I had two jobs at the time. I was working at GNC, working at AT&T, probably making $11 an hour at AT&T, selling cell phones, and probably minimum wage at GNC plus a little bit of commission. So I was trying to figure out ways to make more money. Read that book. Then I was like, okay, real estate is what I want to do, right? So I started listening to every single podcast, buying every single book I could. In between, like when I didn't have customers in the store, when I was working at GNC or AT&T, I would be reading real estate books, listening to podcasts, just being a sponge for every source of knowledge I could find, right? And then one day when I was at AT&T, we had to sell business accounts to customers, and I had a customer come in and I asked him, "Hey, what do you do? What do you do for work?" We had to ask everybody that. And he said he had a house flipping business. And this guy was like, it's the middle of the day wearing shorts and flip flops, just talking about how much money he made flipping houses, and just seemed like he had a pretty cool life. So I started asking him questions and asked if I could kind of shadow him and kind of see what he was doing. And yeah, he actually offered to let me ride around with some of his flips one day. And I was like, oh, absolutely, I'll do. Like, I offered to do work on people's flips. Like if I met people, there was another guy I met, and it was a realtor, and she knew a house flipper, and I offered to do like labor at one of his flips, just kind of learn the process. And so I'm like digging I believe I digged a like trench around the house for him, like just doing hard manual labor, trying to learn. Wasn't the best use of my time. Could have been doing 1,000 other things or got a course or something, but I was just trying to learn any way I could. And bought my first house from a driving for dollars lead. That's kind of how I got started. I didn't have money for marketing. I didn't have tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank. Didn't have any private lenders or anything like that. So got started driving for dollars. I had saved up, I believe, 10 or 11 grand. I had saved up from working every single day for a year at those two jobs and just saving every penny I could. And I bought a house from driving for dollars. It was like a vacant brick house. I bought it for 5 grand with my own cash and just sold it on Facebook Marketplace for like 15 or $16,000 after I closed on it without doing any rehab to it. And then I kind of did the same thing on a few other deals and just snowballed that until where I had enough money in the bank to feel comfortable. I think I quit my job 6 months or so after getting started. Probably should have, in hindsight, quit a lot sooner, but you kind of doubt yourself on, hey, if I quit my job, will I be able to consistently do enough deals to sustain myself? So I was doing one or two deals a month while working those jobs, and then quit and went all in.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, Sam, how old are you? You're still in your 20s, right?
26 right now.
Yeah, which, gosh, man, I wish I had the foresight in my 20s. I didn't start until I was in my 30s, man. I was doing all kinds of other stuff. So I can't even like I don't even know if I can wrap my head around like where you will be when you're I'm 39. When you're 39, man, you have such a great opportunity in front of you. So I think it's really cool. And so many people, and you see these folks all the time who are like in their own way to get a deal, to get their first deal. and you go while working, figure it out, see enough value that you have the courage enough to go spend the 5 grand, buy the house, resell it for 15 or 16,000, put some cash in the bank, and I go, oh, okay, yeah, it took me all year to save up 11 grand. Now I just made
Mhm.
11 grand on one
Yeah.
transaction. And you got to the point where you're doing 1 to 2 deals a month on average, which, it just says a lot about, um, the intangibles in the business. Like you can pretty much do anything with sheer will and discipline and consistent action. You don't have to be that smart. You don't have to know everything, but you do have to like consistently do the work. I think you're like probably one of the best examples of that. And obviously you are just a lifelong learner. Like we were texting one day, and you're like, "Hey, this bookshelf is like my most valuable asset," and it really is. Same, I've got. I'm just like you. I listen to probably 1,000 podcasts, read 100 books, and you just see all these people, and you're like, "Oh, I can do that too." It can't be that hard, right?
Right.
It's simple. It's not easy, as we have both learned. Cool, man. That's really impressive. I think what I like to kind of shift to though is like what your business looks like today
Hmm.
and maybe how you went from hustling 1 to 2 deals to growing it into an actual business.
Yeah. So right now, I'll start with kind of how our team looks, because it's definitely not just me. It started out with me, but it's not just me right now. So right now we have a COO. So he's kind of part of the leadership team is me and him, and then we have two full-time closers. Closers, or other people will call them acquisition managers. And then we have two follow-up specialists. Again, some people in the industry, they'll call them lead managers, basically the same thing. And then we have two transaction coordinators. One of my transaction coordinators, she's also cross-trained in dispo. We don't do a lot of wholesale these days. We're primarily fix and flip or buying to rent. But she will do the dispo for any random deals we get that are, outside of our buy box that we want to wholesale. And then we have two full-time project managers. They're the ones managing all of our rehabs from A to Z. And then we have a project manager assistant slash kind of like runner slash admin. He handles setting up utilities and, checking on properties for us as well. And just helping out the project managers with things they need to kind of free up their time because they're so busy out in the field. And then we have a bookkeeper, and we have I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. No, I believe that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I mean, that's an impressive team. And I know like when we're at these meetings and you and I are having these conversations, we're talking about our business, not so much flipping the house or the real estate that's a mechanism that we're using. And we get into these conversations about what's the appropriate size team, right?
Hmm.
Like, do we do we need all these people, or can we do it with really good, efficient, and effective
Hmm.
people? And then it becomes to the point where we're talking about how can I get some of my time back so that I can focus on growth or focus on adding another vertical to my business. I mean, you're still only 26 and you've got one of the most impressive businesses. Where do you fall on that? Do you feel like you need to have 30 or 40 people, or are you more focused on maybe a smaller, more elite team?
Yeah, it's kind of shifted a little bit over time because I went through a phase like probably 2 years into the business where I was trying to scale this. We had gotten into like the nationwide model, a lot of wholesaling, a lot of innovations, not as many flips at that point. But we were looking at, I was all in the mindset of scale, 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 like grow, 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 get a big team, we had a 4,000 square foot office, and I had like 5 acquisition people at one point. We had like multiple disposition people, and we made a lot of money, but we also were spending a lot of money, and it was very stressful. And it just it wasn't the business I wanted to have. So still want to grow, but it's my focus on growing is more so getting better right now than getting bigger. We'll grow organically. As we need another project manager, as we need another closer, we'll hire them. But we're not going to hire for the sake of hiring. We're not going to get bigger for the sake of getting bigger. Right now, we don't have an office. We might at some point get a very small office just for meetings, interviews, and stuff like that. But we got rid of the big office during COVID. Now we focus hyper local, We're focused on Southern Virginia. We're not buying nationwide. We've reduced we're not doing 15 different exit strategies. We focus more on niching down and just becoming the best at what our niche is. We want to have a small team of A players that are all world class at their individual thing that they do, and not just have a big bloated roster of people that aren't really carrying their weight.
Yeah, I'm like I'm on a tirade to rid the industry of the jargon that is actually irrelevant. Like,
Mhm.
you know, for example, you know how it goes. Somebody says, I do two, three, 400 deals a year. That doesn't mean they're profitable.
No.
Not for the amount of work that you and I know goes into doing three or 400 deals a year. Or, we did a zillion dollars in revenue. Like, that's cool, but how much did you make? How much did you add to your personal net
Mhm.
worth? Like, those are the things that matter, and it's why I love, like, the people in our world we try to keep it real and get the ego out, man. It's the ego that drives us, and me too, man. Like, there was a point in time where we had 30 people, we were in 6 different markets, everybody was in person, in market, lead manager, closer, and like, that
Mhm.
feels good to stand up on a stage and talk about it, but it's really it's painful. Sure, you're doing big revenue numbers. You're making a lot of money. Don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
But I'm looking at the business like you today to go, how can I do the least amount to get the biggest leverage and biggest return for what
Mhm.
our goals are? Um, yeah, so I think it's cool, man. It's just really impressive. Like, you're like a rocket ship, dude. You get in, you get going right out of the gate. You build a meaningful business. I mean, you guys are doing 10 plus, 10, 20 deals a month. Um, like, it's impressive. It really is. So if you were talking to somebody who was maybe on the part of their journey that you and I have both been on, where we're like, oh my gosh, I'm listening to this podcast. This Sam guy, he's crazy. I want to be like Sam. I want to be like Adam. I want to be like Bill. I want to be like Patrick or whoever. What does it really take to scale a business, whether your exits wholesaling or flipping, to over
Mhm.
100 deals a year profitably?
Yeah. First thing that comes to mind is a very high stress tolerance.
Yeah.
That's one thing I tell people sometimes, like kind of jokingly, but also being serious. Like most people, even if they, like you said, it's a simple business. You don't have to be the smartest person in the world to figure it out. It's the discipline to take the action every day, the being resourceful. There's a lot of other skills that go into it, but a lot of people could do it. But the thing is that they couldn't handle the stress that goes into it. The amount of debt that you have to flip 100 houses a year, the amount of people that you have to work with, the amount of problems. I mean, every single week, I'm getting bad news. Like just yesterday, we found out a rehab's gonna probably $20,000 in change orders. We have every single week houses are falling out of contract because buyers financing falls through, or a house doesn't appraise for what it's supposed to appraise for. Like stuff like that happens almost every day because of the volume we do. So like if you don't have a very high stress tolerance, and if you're not very even keeled emotionally, you can't do that type of volume. You'll jump off a bridge. So
Yeah.
that's the first thing I'd say. And then, I mean, man, there's honestly a lot that goes into it. Can you
Well,
repeat? I'm sorry, I kind of forgot
yeah,
I
let me
got
let me
into it.
ask you this. So, like, we're talking about, like, what does it really take to
Yeah,
get scale a business to doing 100 deals a year? What's
yeah,
interesting, I kind of want to go back a little bit, because you
yeah.
did scale up your business initially, where you didn't have the debt, but you were doing a lot of wholesaling and flips. And I think
Mhm.
in the industry, like, the marketing and the gurus are like, do deals with no money, be a wholesaler. But you and I
Yeah,
both know the risk for the wholesaler is on that marketing spend.
yeah,
Because in
yeah.
order to scale that up, you're spending a ton of money with no guarantee that you're getting it back. At least when you're flipping and you're leveraging other people's money, you own an asset.
hmm Yeah. So when it comes to like what it takes to do that type of volume, I look at externally and internally. So externally, you got to have three big things, right? You got to have the deal flow, you got to have the capital to take those deals down, and you got to have the construction project management abilities or team to be able to actually take those. I mean, it's one thing to buy 100 houses or buy a bunch of houses, right? But to be able to actually get them from Where it needs a full rehab to get it to where it's ready to list are two different things. And then having the people and the process internally to be able to make that all happen.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I
as
think,
far as how you're asking, like how it went to, sorry, you froze up on me a little bit. I don't know if it's my internet,
no, I'm good.
but you're asking kind of how we went from like doing, one, two deals a month, or you're asking kind of how we went from
Yeah,
that to
yeah.
where we're at
So
now.
for somebody listening to this, maybe they're doing a deal or two a month, and they really want to go to 5 to 10 deals a month, hit that century mark in a year. Like what is the real key? Is it just spending more money on marketing? Is it just hiring more salespeople? Is it making sure you have, whether you're wholesaling or flipping? If you're flipping it, do you have making sure you have the infrastructure to manage those projects and keep them on time and on budget? Like what would be like the first step? Like you're
Yeah.
coaching me right now. I'm doing 2 deals a month. I'm profitable. I'm like, Sam, I want to do 100. I want to be just like you, man.
Yeah. So I would first kind of identify like what are your strengths and weaknesses, what are the things that you're good at, not good at, and then kind of go by like the who, not how concept. I'm sure you've probably read that book. That's one of my favorite
Oh yeah.
books. Like for me, I identified, okay, I'm not good at project management. I don't have like my predictive index is not built for a project manager. I don't have the construction background. That's not my thing. So if I was trying to scale for me, I would hire a project manager, be one of my first hires. And I would spend all my time on doing what I'm good at, which is talking to sellers, locking up deals, raising capital. So that would be the first thing. Kind of look at your time and see, once you get to a point, you're going to hit a wall to where you can't, like Adam physically can't work more than X amount of hours a week before he has to sacrifice his health, sacrifice his personal life. At some point, you hit that wall to where you have to grow through other people, right? And then when it comes to figuring out, you got to make the decision on, okay, who's going to be my first hire? So for most people, it probably could be a cold caller, an admin person, a transaction coordinator, a project manager, depending on what your business model is and depending on what your strengths and weaknesses are. Like if you're not like me and you hate sales and you hate acquisitions, then your first hire might need to be an acquisition person if you're really good at the other stuff.
Yeah, that in our business that was Bill. Bill's okay at sales, but he at the time was flying for the Navy still. So he didn't actually even if he wanted to get good at sales and be an expert, he didn't have the time. Like he literally couldn't allocate the time to be in enough sellers' houses. But what he was really good at was marketing.
Mm-hmm.
He was generating a meaningful amount of leads, and even with him doing sales, he was getting such a great ROI. He realized that the choke point was sales, and his first hire, he brought in somebody to get on the phones, and it took us from 67 to 135 deals. And then, up over 200 as he realized like, oh, if I put the who in place, I can just do more volume because I have the infrastructure to do it. I think that's the interesting thing too, Sam. And I've done this in the past. I was spending, and I think people I call this like the messy middle, where you're like doing deals, but it's like tighter margin, but you're not scaled up enough to spread your margin out. And you're like, I need to increase my deal flow.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point I was spending about 40 grand a month on marketing. And in my mind, I'll just spend 80 and double.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the way the world works, because if you don't have the appropriate infrastructure, what even on the sales side, but definitely if you're doing flips and it's on the
Mm-hmm.
project management side,
Yep.
you'll get your lunch eaten. So it is the who, not how. It's not just the marketing and lead gen and deal gen. It's the infrastructure you need to actually take care of that part of your business, which you've obviously done a pretty good job on over the years. So I think that's really cool. So now that you guys, I'm also just curious, you took this nationwide wholesaling model, which probably taught you a ton about acquisitions. You
Mm-hmm.
brought it all local and you said, I've got to become a good flipper. Why did you do that?
Yeah, so a couple of things. We went away from the nationwide model because, for one, the contract to close ratio was abysmal. And you talk to anybody who does nationwide, if they're being honest with you, they're probably at or under 50% of their contracts get to the closing table. Because it's just, no one's going to be good at underwriting deals nationwide because you don't know the markets. You don't have connections. You're working with 50 different title companies. Like logistically, it's a massive headache. I don't care how cheap the leads are. Logistically, it's just like it doesn't matter how cheap the leads are if you can't get them to the closing table, right? And then you
Yep.
can't maximize the exit strategies because you don't have the buyer relationships if you're wholesaling, and you can't really flip nationwide. I mean, we tried it. We did some flips successfully in other states, but it was a headache. um, and then as far as why we went to flipping, Adam, I'd say, we saw an increase in our cost per lead. The lead cost has increased a lot since when I started in 2020, for everything, for mail, for Google ads, for cold call. Most people you talk to, that's the biggest choke point for them, and the biggest bottleneck is they need more leads, or they're struggling to get enough quality leads and deal flow, right? So for us, we had that increase in costs, and then we started to see, like, when interest rates went up, we weren't getting the same margins on our wholesale deals. Those $20,000 deals where we were selling them to someone who's going to keep as a rental and they're getting a 3% interest rate. Now those buyers are tightening up on their underwriting, what they're paying. So we're making less and we're spending more to get those deals. So I'm like, okay, we have to increase our average profit per deal. I mean, that's one of our biggest levers we have in the business is a profit per deal. So, flipping in my market, a deal we could wholesale and make 10 or 15 on, normally we can flip it and make somewhere between 35 to 40 or more. So it just made
And
sense. I can,
spending the same amount to acquire it too. Like
yeah, spending
if
the
it's
same
costing you
amount.
5 or 6 grand to get the deal, now instead of bringing in 10 or 15, you're bringing in 35, 45.
Yeah, at least 35 to 45. Yeah. And you don't need a bigger team. I mean, we do need project managers now, but we had disposition people before. So we kind of just swapped out having two dispo people for two project managers. The rest of our team is the same. We still have the closers, we still have a transaction coordinator, still need a bookkeeper and an admin. Everything else is the same setup.
Yeah, and the other cool thing about that and making that transition, especially because you bring it in local, you become one. It actually enhances your marketing because you do become the local expert in your market. You become the guy. People will bring you deals because they know you do deals, and
Mm-hmm.
then you're getting a deal or two or 5 or 10 a year that are just coming off referrals and costing you nothing to get them, which is increasing your overall
Yeah.
ROI,
I have a
which I think.
cool sidebar on that from this week, actually. One of our new project manager we just hired like 2 weeks ago, he's out in the field looking at a property. One of the neighbors comes up to him and says, hey, I have two rental houses that are vacant. I want to get out of the rental business. And he got the name and number of the seller, passed it to our sales team, and we actually locked up two houses, free leads, just from my project manager being out in the field. So that stuff does happen where contractors know someone who wants to sell a house, or a project manager sees stuff out in the field. So
Yeah,
that's a
no,
good
a
point.
little tip that I've seen people have a lot of success with for anybody listening is when you have projects going on, you can put a sign in the front yard that says "Want to sell your house for cash" with your number on it, and people
Mm-hmm.
see your folks like in there fixing those houses up, making them nice, and they know you're local because you're
Mm-hmm.
actually doing the thing locally. Like that's free lead gen right there. All you got to do is buy the sign and have your project managers put them at all your projects. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a kind of a little hack there that if you're flipping houses in your local market, super powerful. Yeah, it's really cool, man. It's super impressive. I think. Oh, the other benefit that I really love to see, the real estate game is it's cool to make a lot of money, but there's really two numbers you got to focus on as you're growing your wealth. Your active income, which you're able to do through flipping houses and wholesaling houses previously, but also your net worth, which you build through buying and acquiring assets. When you're buying a house cheap, you're actually taking title to it, your ability to rehab it. And in a great market like yours, where the price points are reasonable, you can turn pretty much any house into a rental, which
Mm-hmm.
is adding to your net worth and also gives you an exit strategy. Hey, if the flip doesn't go well, the margin looks small and I can rent it out, I'll just hold on to this asset, which ultimately is helping you in the net worth side. So, and I know you've bought some rentals over the years, which I think you will be thinking your 40-year-old self will be thinking your 26-year-old self. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. I want to just kind of shift today to today's marketplace. My 2 cents on today's marketplace. The people who are this is a great market to be in because if you're a professional in the space, you're dialed in, you have the ability to acquire assets at a great price, you can still make a lot of money. Plus, you don't have the same amount of competition that you we had in 21 or, the beginning of 22, where everybody and their sister wanted to be a wholesaler or a flipper or whatever it was. So it's less competitive today than it definitely was in 2021, 2022. But what do you see that's working today for marketing? And yeah, let's just talk marketing. Like what's working well for you today in marketing? What channel? What do you like the best right now?
Yeah, my favorite channel lately has been buying from other wholesalers. That's something I didn't really do early on. But I focused really hard on that. Like I have certain websites. I'm checking them every single day, usually twice a day, to see what new deals are popping up. I have a spreadsheet where I have all the local wholesaler contacts that I've worked with before, and I constantly follow up with them. And I try to beat other people out by just being the quickest to always, because I'm constantly checking it. I'm usually the first one to look at the house, first one to make an offer on it. And I make an offer on everything, even if the price is too high. If it fits my buy box, I'm making an offer and I'm following up. And we get a good amount of deals month over month, just from the free, that free source. And my favorite deals are the free deals, because it's infinite ROI for
100%.
us. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. But we do all the basic direct seller stuff as well, cold call, mail, SMS. And that stuff still works. It doesn't work as quite as well as it used to. We're paying more per lead and having to get more leads, get a contract than what we saw previously, when there wasn't quite as much competition, and just postage costs have went up. Everything's just kind of gone up. But
Yep.
buying from wholesalers and even getting some agent referrals, like just looking to get more free deals to where we're not having to spend a crazy amount on marketing. That's been one of my favorite things to work on this year.
Yeah, which by the way, if you're actually able to buy the real estate and turn it and add value to it, you have this, it opens the door to all these free deals. Basically, you got all these hustlers, these wholesalers out there doing all the front end crappy work, the hard work, acquiring the
Mm-hmm.
deals, and then you get to buy it from them. I think that's really powerful, and that's why that's where the margin comes from in this business.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the ability to have a couple exit strategies that you can do really well, and then your ability to buy and source deals from multiple places, especially the free places. It really does make a meaningful impact on the actual net profit of the business, which I think is really important. Oh, okay, I got two more things for you. Number one, what would you say your top three lessons are you've learned becoming a real estate investor and a business owner up until today?
Yeah, you told me that was one of the things you were going to ask me, so I actually thought about it for a couple minutes before we popped on. One of the things I was going to say is just the power of having A players on your team versus B, C players. I found, you hear a lot of people talk about it, but when you actually are operating the business, you want to kind of be cheap and like hire cheaper labor, right? Like my first transaction coordinator, we had a VA in the Philippines. We're paying like $5 an hour, $6 an hour, trying to manage our files. Didn't work out. we've had we've had acquisition people. We tried the route of bringing on commission only 1099 acquisition people. Didn't work out too well. So I found for every role, at least the core roles in the business, like a acquisition person, a project manager, a transaction coordinator, I want to pay more than our competition's paying. I want to I'll pay a premium all day long to get a true A player. And when I say A player, I look at traction and how that defines it. Are they a core value fit? And then GWC, do they get it, want it, have the capacity to do it? Those are the main things that we look for when it comes to that. And I've had experiences, I had my first project manager I hired was a complete rock star, still is a complete rock star. And, second project manager I hired didn't do so well on, and he's no longer with the company. I just had to replace him a few weeks ago. But just seeing the differences and the profit from like the flips and like the time frame of the flips, like that one hire, I mean, it made a critical difference. Like I'd rather pay an A player project manager twice what I pay a C player project manager. Like that's how much of a difference it makes.
Yeah, because that A player is gonna 4x what you're paying them, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna be worth their weight in gold, and you get to make a meaningful impact on their lives too by providing a really cool opportunity to work with a great business, which I think is undervalued. Yeah, totally
Yeah.
agree with you. Here's the thing for a lot of people, if they're maybe have one person or two people on their team, most people don't know what an A player looks like until they get some A players, they get some B players, or maybe you get a string of B players and you think you have A players.
Mm,
But the A players are the ones that really genuinely impact the bottom line on the business. And it's
yeah.
crystal clear. Like you will know when you see somebody operating, you go, gosh, I'm thankful I got that person on my team.
Yeah. One litmus test I heard someone else mention is just like, how do you talk to your spouse or your partner about your employees? Like, if you're constantly telling your like I'm constantly bragging to my fiance or talking like glowing about certain employees to my fiance, like those are the A players.
Yeah.
And then when you find yourself like complaining to your friends or to your family about certain people, okay, well you need to let them go. You need to that shows
Yeah.
that they're probably not an A player if you're constantly complaining and groaning about them. But I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, if you look
And
at like one
I think what
project,
oh, go ahead, Sam. Sorry.
I was gonna say like if you take like the average house, like an A player project manager, if they're really good, they're going to negotiate everything. So they're probably getting materials and labor at a better price. You might save a couple $1,000s on each project just from that. Then let's say they save you a month on holding costs because they get the project done cheaper. You might save $3,000 or $4,000 on each project multiplied by X amount of houses per year by having someone better in that role. And you kind of look at the same thing with acquisitions. One acquisition person who's a really good A player, really good at sales, they might get the average house they lock up, they might lock it up $5,000 cheaper, and they're going to get more contracts per month. So that's probably been the biggest thing I've learned in the business.
Yeah, they definitely create just an A player alone can create margin in the business. I think
Mm-hmm.
your mindset around that's so good. A lot of people look at the it would cost me too much to hire that person. No, it's costing you too much to not hire that
Yeah.
person. You just can't see it yet because you haven't been through the ringer on it. Man, this has been really awesome. Yeah, I agree with you. By the way, the if you're like here's what we do too as leaders, because people who build businesses like us, we have a high degree of self accountability, high degree of self discipline. So when something's not going well somewhere, it's usually us going, what am I not doing correct?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yep.
am I not training that person enough? And your mind will go there. And what will happen is you'll end up holding on to somebody a little bit longer because you're looking at yourself first. You're going,
Mm-hmm.
dang, is my system not good enough? Was the 30, 60, 90 downboarding not good enough? Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe I didn't lead well enough. And then, now you're 90, another
Mm-hmm.
90 days on the road and you go, oh my gosh, no, it's this person. I got to get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so just be careful of that for anybody listening. Trust your gut. If you feel like somebody's not performing, take a really, really hard look at this. This has been great, man. I appreciate you spending some time on a Friday with me. So if people you're in the Southern Virginia market, if you're in
Mm-hmm.
the Southern Virginia market and you want to bring deals or have Sam close some deals and you got some deals, definitely find Sam. But Sam, how can people work with you? How can they if they've got some money they want to get employed into real estate, or if they want to bring you deals, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I'll give them a couple ways. So you can find me on Facebook. That's really the only social media right now I'm active on. Is Sam Hopkins on Facebook, and then I'll also drop my phone number if they want to text me. I don't ever answer unknown calls, so my phone's on do not disturb pretty much 24/7. But if you text me, let me know who you are, what you're texting me about. It's 540-630-1456 is my cell.
There it is. There it is. You're gonna have a bunch of people going, Sam, mentor me. It's like cool.
Only
I'll
only
mentor
text me if you have a deal or if you have money. I'm just
Or
kidding.
if you're gonna go hunt deals, if you're gonna go hunt the deals, then bring the deal to Sam, and that's how you're gonna get your mentorship.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Always lead with value. Always lead with value. Sam, dude, I appreciate you, man. I love what you guys are doing. Always impressive. I appreciate you spending some time coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Adam. It's been fun.
All right. If you listened to the last episode and you thought, gosh, I really need to figure this real estate thing out, but you feel like money is the thing holding you back, my partner Bill is doing a 5-day challenge on exactly how he's raised over $100 million. You have to be at the challenge. If you want to know exactly how to get money for your real estate deals, you don't need to have good credit. You don't need to have a bank in your back pocket. You just need to follow the steps that Bill's going to teach during the 5-day flip funding challenge. You got to go get signed up for it. It basically costs you nothing to do. And it's the one thing that every business needs to get money for real estate deals.